Today on the DCiReporter, people unite around a humanitarian crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. A group of DC residents head to the U.S. Congress seeking support for DC statehood. This summer, DC is hosting a summer film festival at the DC Gateway Pavilion in Ward 8. And in our Places and People segment, we'll visit the home of Frederick Douglass. This is the DCiReporter. Welcome to the DCiReporter. My name is Franklin Garcia. You can watch us online at dctv.org or DCiReporter.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at DCiReporter. With over 60,000 children seeking humanitarian help at the U.S.-Mexico border, the President is asking Congress for $3.7 billion to deal with the crisis. Nearly 60,000 children have arrived at the Mexico-U.S. border in the past few months. Many of these children have traveled thousands of miles by themselves, fleeing violence in Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala.
We know that all of these children are coming because of poverty and violence in our countries. And they're coming here to find their mother, their father, an uncle who will be able to protect them. So we feel that our leaders need to step up and deal with a humanitarian crisis with compassion and with all of the due respects that children merit.
But many believe that violence in their home country is not enough to grant these children immigration asylum. They also blame the Obama administration 2012 action to legalize the immigration status of people that came to the U.S. when they were children, known as DACA, responsible for the border crisis. The Obama administration has signaled that it wants to deport these children fast and has asked the U.S. Congress for $3.7 billion to address the issue, including deporting them. Immigrant advocates are being vocal against deporting these children, and some have started a weekly vigil in support of them. They say that because these children are not from Mexico or Canada, a 2008 law protects them. Under that law, most of the unaccompanied minors being caught by the Border Patrol agents must be handed over to the Department of Health and Human Services, which coordinates care for them, finds them safe housing, and helps advise them on their legal rights as their immigration cases are decided. The President is now asking Congress to amend that law in a way that would allow Border Patrol agents to render a deportation decision themselves and quickly deport the children back to their home country. Once again, D.C. residents head to the U.S. Congress asking members of Congress to support D.C. statehood. A group of D.C. residents, as part of the Statehood Coalition, visited members of Congress in the hopes to gain support for Bill H.R. 292. Known as the New Columbia Admission Act, the bill currently has 67 members of Congress as co-sponsors. The bill aims to make the District of Columbia the 51st state in the Union.
Going to be back by the end of the year, and it's an ongoing campaign, and we're making steady progress. And I'm glad we're here, and I'm glad we're showing Congress people that we really do have a lot of support for this bill. This is the future. This is the future, and this is what's coming in the next 10 years, certainly.
Statehood advocates hope their efforts will bring full congressional representation to over 640,000 D.C. residents in the U.S. Congress.
I've lived in the district for close to 20 years now, and I was here during all those years where, no one was really even talking about statehood. We were all just talking about, well, okay, let's see what sort of more minor reforms we can pass. And that was kind of how the whole idea was sold to us, that, well, it'll certainly be easier to pass incremental reforms. And I think, that just hasn't been proven out, after this many years. I think there's not really an active effort around that idea. Whereas, the New Columbia, there's so many advantages to this. Of course, we're not talking about a constitutional amendment. We're not talking about something where we have to worry about non-germane amendments. You know, I think there's just so many advantages to this. Now we know, you know, this isn't obviously in the cards passing this year, or probably in the next couple of Congresses.
DC residents and friends can watch outdoor movies all summer long thanks to the Gateway DC Summer Film Series. The DC Office of Motion Picture and Television Development is holding its first summer film festival at the Gateway DC in Ward 8. The outdoor film festival will run for 8 weeks and will close on August 13th.
So we're here live at the Gateway DC Summer Film Series. Tonight we're doing a celebration of Latino heritage. We're partnering with the DC Latino Caucus, the Ward 8 Arts and Culture Council, the Analog Underground, and the DC Office of Motion Picture and Television Development. We've got pre-community salsa class going on, and we're going to be screening Mi Familia later. So we're really excited to be out here. It's a beautiful space. We're really happy to be engaging the community and providing this outlet to have free, fun, safe entertainment in Ward 8. I live in Ward 8, so I'm really happy to be co-coordinating this series. We're here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. at Gateway DC, which is located at 2700 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast. It's right by the Congress Heights Metro Station on the Green Line, and it's also accessible via several bus lines. Each week we're doing a themed film night where we have pre-film programming and vendors and fashion trucks and food trucks, and then we screen a film on the lawn under the stars. It's absolutely free, and we want the entire community to come out.
The film festival features vendors and organizations that offer and feature their products and services to the community. The festival has a different theme each week. The fourth week of the festival was Latino Night, and moviegoers had the opportunity to take free salsa classes before the film started. The DC Latino Caucus was one of the organizations that partnered with the Summer Film Festival.
Hello everyone, my name is Karen Venegas, and I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. We had a blast. We at the DC Latino Caucus, we're really happy to be part of this. And we hope that this continues in the future, and we would be happy to also continue supporting. So continue dancing, and the film will be great as well. Take care.
Frederick Douglass is one of the most prominent figures in American history. He rose from slavery to international stage and led many causes. His home, now a national landmark, is in the southeast part of the city. In this segment, we'll visit the house where Frederick Douglass lived until his death in 1895. Longtime activist Philip Pennell joins us in this segment.
It is always a great pleasure to be here in Anacosta's historic district, here at Cedar Hill, at the home of Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist and human rights advocate. He was known as the Sage of Anacostia, and we here in Ward 8 are just thrilled and proud that this cultural and historical jewel is right here in our midst to eternally commemorate and memorialize the great Frederick Douglass. And as we go forth in his spirit, he always said the best way to deal with oppression is to agitate, agitate, agitate. And those of us here in the District of Columbia, where we are second-class citizens without a vote in our national legislature, should definitely take a lesson from his life and do just that, because he said power concedes nothing without a demand, and we have to demand that we cease being second-class citizens. So thank you, Frederick Douglass, for continuing to be in our midst with your spirit.
The Frederick Douglass House, also known as Cedar Hill, now a national landmark in the southeast part of Washington, D.C., was built between 1855 and 1859. Frederick Douglass bought it in 1877 for $6,700 and lived in the house until his death in 1895. Helen Pitts was the second wife of Frederick Douglass and the last person to live in the historical 14-room house.
Upon her death, 8 years after Frederick Douglass, the association took over the house and all of its contents, keeping this as a shrine to the memory of Frederick Douglass, a museum, and a place where people could learn about Frederick Douglass. It's through the efforts of Helen that we're able to walk through the front door today. Now, in the 1960s, the association gave the house and the grounds over to the National Park Service. We continue that mission to this day. But Helen was a very forward-thinking woman. The last person to live in this house as a resident was Helen. It's like a time capsule for that reason.
On the first floor of the house is the East Parlor, or former parlor. This is where Mr. Douglass entertained guests. The West Parlor, also known as the family parlor, was the place where the family would sit around after dinner. As part of a daily routine, Mr. Douglass would spend up to 5 hours a day studying and writing in his library. In addition to reading and writing, Mr. Douglass taught himself multiple languages, how to read music, and how to play the violin. Daily meals, family gatherings, and dinners with guests were all held in the dining room. It is the largest room in the house. Mr. Douglass moved the kitchen indoors at a time when it was uncommon to have a kitchen indoors. Most houses had an outdoor kitchen so that if a spark from the fire escaped, only the kitchen burned and not the entire house.
Know that Frederick Douglass, on a visit to Egypt, climbed the Great Pyramid at age 70. He was always a very physically fit and robust man. He worked out every day, well into his 70s. Let's step into the residential portion of the house. This is the bedroom of Douglass's first wife, Anna. Now, as I mentioned, she was an invalid the whole time she lived here. She would only live in this house for 4 years before she died. She suffered from rheumatoid arthritis, had already had a stroke. It would be a second stroke that eventually killed her in 1882. Now, when Anna dies, Frederick Douglass essentially closes off this room, keeping it as a shrine to her memory. 2 years later, Frederick Douglass marries his second wife, Helen, and this is Helen's bedroom. Now, you can see she was a much more modern woman. She has a typewriter and a sewing machine in there. The typewriter stems from the fact that she was a clerk typist at the Register of Deeds office down in Washington, D.C. That's where she met Frederick Douglass. Those are her red shoes right next to the bed. And by all accounts, they had a very happy marriage.
On the second floor, Frederick Douglass' bedroom contains a display of many of his personal things. Thank you for watching us. Remember, you can watch us online at dctv.org or DCiReporter.com, or follow us on Twitter at DCiReporter. I'm Franklin Garcia, and I will see you next time on the DCi Reporter.